The secret sauce. I probably wouldn't have to work anymore. I want my search focused pieces to not be so easy to spot. Even if it's great information, even if it's accurate, they don't trust things that look like this. We've all gotten a little jaded.
What actually does audience-centric mean? And please don't give me a marketer answer.
We should be in service to our audience, but in a way that gets the right people in the room, building topics around that so that we can sell to them. Realize that, okay, it's really important that you weigh SEO with all of the other different growth levers, because it's not the only one. It's one, and it can be a very important one, but it's definitely not the only one, or even the most appropriate one, depending on what type of business you are and what your goals are.
Hey, what's up? You're tuned into The Cutting Room, the show where we talk to industry-leading marketing professionals about their content marketing philosophy, process, and pregame before they edit an article live. I'm your host, Tommy Walker, and thank you so much for tuning in today. My guest today is Kameron Jenkins, the content lead over at Shopify. Before that, she was a content advisor over at Spotify, as well as one of the key players in the Moz content strategy. And I'm excited to have this conversation today because she is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the intersection between SEO, customer-centric content, and product-centric content. And I think we're going to get a lot out of this conversation. One of the things that I'm really excited about too is that we're going to talk a lot about content team design and how that can play a role from the creation and measurement all the way through the funnel and the ways to create content in a way that it makes the most sense for the business and ladders up to business priorities. Before we get started, I would like to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Content Harmony. They are a brief writing tool that consolidates at least 4 of my favorite tools and saves me about 2 hours per content brief. I hate briefing, and this tool, I swear, makes life so much simpler. We're going to go into a little bit more detail before the edit, so we'll get a quick ad running there. You can see what's going on. And if you are interested in it, you are able to get 2 months of free bonus credits just by signing up through our link. Helps the show out and would be a lot of extra support. So that's that. Now, without any further ado, let's bring Kameron onto the show.
Thank you for having me. And Tommy, you have quite the radio voice. Wow.
Thanks. We're going to just jump straight into it. Tell me a little bit about your content marketing philosophy and how it has evolved over time.
Sure. Yeah. My philosophy, it's nothing revolutionary. It doesn't even sound very snazzy, but it's clear, which I'm a big fan of clarity. And I think that it's a really nice guiding principle. So I will just say that it's product relevant, audience centric, channel specific. So the overlap of those 3 things. If you kind of like to visualize things in graph form, like I do, if you picture like a Venn diagram where there's like audience, channel, and product, it's kind of that sweet spot where those 3 things overlap is kind of what I view as a successful B2B content marketing strategy. That's evolved over time because I'm coming from a very like SEO focused background. When I first got started in content marketing, it was a very like content and SEO hybrid type of role. I think a lot of us come from similar backgrounds, or at least there's like 2 camps in content marketing where there's more of like the editorial side of the house and the people who kind of cut their teeth on like the SEO content side of things. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. So my philosophy has evolved because in the beginning, it was very much just like, oh, you're creating content to get organic search traffic, and Google is law. And that is kind of where the mentality I was coming from. And it wasn't very focused on audience, and it wasn't very focused on anything else, really. It was just like, how do we create things that will get us to rank? And over time, as I've become more embedded in, I think, more full funnel, kind of full growth lever marketing teams, I've kind of gotten to realize that, okay, it's really important that you weigh SEO with all of the other different growth levers, because it's not the only one. It's one, and it can be a very important one, but it's definitely not the only one, or even the most appropriate one, depending on what type of business you are and what your goals are. So that's kind of how it's evolved over time, from being very like channel specific, SEO specific, to something that's very much a blend of like audience, product, and channel, and SEO not being the only channel.
So the question that I have, because I've been seeing this a lot as part of the conversation lately, right, is Okay, you can hear me now. Perfect. Um, as part of the conversation lately is basically how Google is taking its consideration, and what I've noticed, right? And tell me if you've seen this as well, is that I've been doing SERP analysis for one of my clients now, and we've done probably over 100 different SERPs at this point. And what I've been noticing um, is that links matter a little bit less than they used
Mm,
to. And a lot of those tropes that we've heard about um, aren't as relevant anymore. So,
mm,
links, word count, all of these things that we've been told um, aren't doing that. And the reason why I bring that up, right, is I think that Google has a lot more engagement metrics than we ever had before in the past, right? You've got time on site, you've got scroll depth, you've got all of those different like engagement metrics. Do you believe that it has something to do with traffic that's not coming from Google to then tell Google these are quality indicators and this is something that you should rank? Maybe that's a leading question, but thought I
mm.
might bring that up.
Yeah, if I could know the secret sauce, I probably wouldn't have to work anymore. Um, but yeah, I don't know the secret sauce. I don't even know if I can hypothesize. It's an interesting. I think anything is valid when it comes to like how they measure it, because we don't really know. But there are measurements and proxies, right? I mean, they're saying their guiding principle, what they want to rank is helpful content that displays expertise, authoritativeness, trust. These are all like nice sounding things that of course you'd want that type of content to rank, but the logistical, like how do we measure that? How do we create an algorithm that measures like what is
Right.
expertise in terms of like the actual algorithm? How do you measure that? I don't know how they're measuring it. I think it's been helpful so far to focus on um, what they say they want to reward. However they measure that, it tends to be that if you're chasing what they say they want to reward, it almost doesn't matter how they're getting there and how they're
Right.
measuring it. It tends to lead you in the right direction. So that's kind of my guiding principle there. But I think any theories are valid.
I just wanted to put it out there. It's
Yeah.
not a popular theory at this stage, but it's something that I'm seeing a lot of and going like, huh. Just going in depth on some of these pieces, I'm like, wait a second, I'm seeing
Mm.
something totally different.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, you had said so audience centric is
Mm-hmm.
one that we hear a lot of, and I told you in
Uh-huh.
the pre-call that I was going to push you on that one.
Please.
What actually does audience centric mean? And please don't give me a marketer answer.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, like going back to when I said my philosophy in the beginning is nothing revolutionary, I think it's definitely not fluffy, but it is not revolutionary or like shiny or snazzy or anything like that. It really just means audience centric in the juxtaposition of all three of those things, right? So I've been on content marketing teams where they've been really focused on audience, where they're like, okay, let's use open up Google Analytics. Let's look at our email list and let's look at like who's actually consuming our content and then find out like reverse engineer from that, like what would this group of people want to hear?
Hmm.
And that's great to be so in service of your audience. I think that's awesome. But if you decouple that from channel and if you decouple that from product, then you might end up filling the room, but filling the room with the wrong people, right? It might not translate into any kind of business because in B2B SaaS we're creating content for an audience, yes, but we're doing it to the end goal there is
Yeah.
to get business for your company. And so when I say audience centric, I mean, yes, like we should be in service to our audience, but in a way that gets the right people in the room so that we can sell to them, obviously in the most natural way possible. So it doesn't sound, and we can talk about that later too, like what does product centric mean and what does that look like? But when I say audience centric, it's really, I can't decouple it from channel and product because yes, focus on the audience, but not so much that you're not talking about things that don't ladder up to your product in some way, shape, or form.
Right. And I think, first of all, I want to ask the audience here too, what does audience centric mean to you? Because we've heard it a lot on the show and we've it's very different for everybody. What I think is cool about what you're saying though, is that you're like actually going through and checking out email addresses, and like how deep are you digging into that, or at least how often are you
Mhm.
digging into that to make sure that you're reaching the right people and finding that resonance?
It's differed depending on what team or company I'm at for sure. So, for example, where I'm at now, there's an actual research team. No, they don't live within content, but we are able to glean a lot of insights from them. So we have a research team that's actually telling us like, here is our ideal customer, here's our existing customer, here are people who are on the site, and they're giving us analytics and data about that. And so we're
Yep.
really we make sure we're ingesting a lot of that information because it's not like it's required. No one's telling us like
Right.
listen to these calls and listen to this data team, but I prioritize it on all of my teams because I think that's so crucial to know who
Yeah.
we're talking to and who we want to talk to, because sometimes there's a delta there. Sometimes we're talking to an audience and we're attracting an audience that isn't necessarily the same people that we want to, that are our best fit merchants or customers. So that's how we do it currently. We rely closely on our data team, but in the past, it's even been things as simple as pulling up, like you said, the email list and looking at like, okay, what types of companies are we talking to here, making sure that we're like my last company, Spotify, it's enterprise SaaS, but there's varying degrees of enterprise. Like, are we talking
Right.
about the New York Times, or are we talking about like a little bit smaller of a company? Like, who are we talking to here? Are we talking to, what vertical are they in? Are they a publisher? Are they e-commerce? Like that all should help craft your message, because when you're ultra generic, it doesn't resonate with anyone. But
Right.
sometimes too, if you're specific to the wrong things, you're attracting the wrong type of audience. So anyway, all of that to say, it's pretty important to make sure you have a finger on the pulse of that. I don't think it's necessary to do like weekly or anything like that, but as long as you're
Right.
like doing some kind of regular cadence of like, okay, just making sure like we're attracting the right people. This is our audience. Okay, cool. Like, and just reconciling those.
And it's funny, like, so when I was at Shopify, one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that we did is we had a regular case study cadence where we were doing
Mm-hmm.
case study every week on the Shopify Plus side. Because we were so small, we had the ability to contact our customers a little bit more directly.
Mm-hmm.
I know the situation's not like that now because Shopify is a way bigger company than when I was there. But what I found, and I try to bring this into my team design, which we can start talking about
Mm-hmm.
team design as well. Um, and product centricity and the sort of intersection between all of this. Um, we had somebody doing case studies on a weekly basis, and they were bringing the insights that they found from those conversations, because it wasn't just company X works with company Y and sees Z results. It was like, tell me about how you got started. What are some of the challenges you're having now? Like all of that, we could then bring that into the conversation about how our planning was going to go, so we could
Mm-hmm.
start to create content that was literally guided by the customer.
Yeah.
um, Tell me a little bit more, so let's get into the product centricity aspect
Mm-hmm.
of this, and then I want to move into team design.
Definitely. Yeah. So product centricity for me, it doesn't mean, because it sounds on the surface like you're saying like everything has to be about your product, like you're doing case studies and feature explainers and that's kind of all you're doing. I think that should be a component of your strategy, but definitely not the whole strategy, because you want to respect the full funnel, right? Like not everyone is ready
Hmm.
for your product specific content. You need to attract people who are not brand or product aware yet. So how do you do that, but in a way that still can funnel people eventually, even if it's not that step one, funnel people eventually to your product. And the way we think about it, the way that I kind of have built my teams, is starting with the features of your product. So getting like actually pretty granular and saying like, okay, what is our product? What are the 5, 10, whatever things it does? What are the main features of it, or
Hmm.
benefits or use cases, or however you want to frame that? And then building topics around that. So you have your feature, let's say inventory management is a feature of the Shopify point of sale, which is the product I've marketed at Shopify before. Inventory management is a main feature there. Well, it's also a
Hmm.
topic that a lot of people are interested in. So, starting with that feature, you can do keyword research around that, pop inventory management into your keyword tool of choice if you're doing SEO
Right.
focused content, for example, and it'll pull up tons of ideas of queries that people are asking related to inventory management. I know that if I write about those things, I don't have to say, this is how Shopify does inventory management, step one, two, three, four. Here's how you do it in the tool. I can
Right.
talk about that concept and answer that person's question. And then somewhere like, mid and whatever, like naturally woven into that piece, I could be like, hey, by the way, if you're interested in learning how you can do this in Shopify, here you go. But I'm still going to answer your question here in a way that's not forcing the product on you. And then if and when that reader is ready, they can find that information where we have a case study, for example, on how a merchant
Right.
is using our inventory management feature. But it's not all shoved in the same piece, and it's not we're not creating content on a general interest topic. Back to that audience centricity thing. Like maybe your audience is interested in it, but it's really not related to your product. So when you do add a CTA, it just feels very shoehorned in and it doesn't feel natural and it makes the whole piece feel like an ad because the two things don't really belong together. But when you're creating content around top of funnel topics that relate to your product in some way, shape, or form or ladder up to it, it doesn't feel like salesy or it doesn't feel kind of gross or shoehorned in because it's
Yeah.
about the same thing.
Yeah. What I think is interesting, and I've seen this. I was actually just explaining this to a stakeholder with a client that I'm working with right now,
Hmm.
where there's like the top down approach, where it's like let's find the top of funnel keywords and then try to work our way down
Hmm.
into whatever ebook it is or whatever we're trying to do, and then the other side of that is let's take and sounds like it's where you're coming from. Let's take some of our bottom of funnel stuff and work our way up.
Yeah.
That way we know sort of what that customer journey is supposed to look like, which I think is, does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think so. I always like to say, I mean, there's again different like company models and business models and things like that. But in general, I found that, if you start top down, you end up feeling like you're filling a leaky bucket, is the
Hmm.
analogy I usually use. Like you're filling like great, lots of traffic, but if you don't know if it's qualified or going to go anywhere because you
Right.
haven't built or plugged the hole in the bottom. Like, so starting at the bottom and making sure that like you're really tight there and then funneling up and I just feel like it generally results in more qualified traffic and more relevant traffic.
And it allows you to know how you're going to weave the product in a little bit more
Yeah.
intuitively than, like you were saying before, shoehorn it in.
Hmm.
um, all right, well, let's talk about team design and kind of weave that into the process part of the conversation.
Hmm.
So we have the bottom up approach that you're
Hmm.
taking. We have a lot of customer research that's going into this. Tell me about your planning process from ideation to publication, and also how is your team design working into that?
Definitely. Yeah, I'll start with team design and then you can kind of see how all the components fit together and in like an
Absolutely.
example planning session. Yeah. So the way I built the retail content marketing team, I'll use that as an example because it's the most recent example. I built it around crafts, so subspecialties within content marketing. So in the beginning of this call, I was talking about my content marketing journey and how some people have like that more editorial side of the house. Some people are more SEO focused content marketers. So that's kind of how I built out my team as well. I leaned into the skills that certain content marketers tend to have. Some people are really good at SEO focused stuff. Some people are like really good at case studies and diving into the product. Some people are really great at gated content, thought leadership, etc. So that is exactly how I built out the team. We ended up having an SEO focused content marketer, product focused content marketer, someone doing gated, someone actually doing, they were kind of split between content refreshes because we had a lot of legacy content we needed to update, and then doing
Yep.
other thought leadership, top of funnel type stuff. That was a little bit more experimental than just your standard like SEO focused content. And then we
Hmm.
had someone doing, did I already say gated? I can't remember. Gated content, and then someone doing product partnerships for a little while as well. The reason that I picked those specific things were always based on like a company goal or a business goal that we had at the time. So I started with SEO focused content marketing because the goal at the time was, hey, we need to, and I talked about the bottom up approach, but this was actually starting a little bit in the reverse of what I normally would
Yep.
because the goal at the time was, hey, we need to like see what we can do to get awareness, but lower CAC at the same time because they were relying on mostly paid marketing at the same time. So they wanted organic, they wanted a steady stream of awareness in this new vertical. And so like we decided to lean into SEO focused content marketing, at least first. But then shortly following that was our product focused content marketer. So we kind of had like the full funnel covered, right? We have like the top of funnel stuff. We have someone refreshing that content, making sure it's not, losing traffic. We have someone handling like the mid bottom funnel. We have someone, doing like more lead gen focused stuff. So we felt like a nice full funnel coverage there on the team. The way that worked in like a planning session, I'll give you just an example again to use inventory management because I have already used that
Sure.
example so far. Let's say that is like what we decided to focus on for this month of publishing because it's something we keep hearing in conversations. We're listening to calls with customers. It keeps coming up. We have a lot. Let's say we have some inventory features, some new ones that are going to be launching. Whatever the reasons are, we decide to focus on inventory management as a focus theme for this month. And so we'll get together as a team and we'll say, hey, here's the focus. How is everyone going to approach that? And we'll have like a little brainstorm session. Usually we're not coming to that meeting with like no ideas whatsoever. People have done a little bit of the legwork. And in this meeting, we're kind of saying like, here's my idea. How can this plug into your idea? How can we kind of work together on this? And so we can tackle that from the full funnel just with the people we have at that meeting. So let's say our SEO focused content marketer says like, hey, we have no coverage on just inventory management as a general keyword. I'm going to focus on a beast of an article. I'm going to make the best
Yep.
inventory management article I possibly can. We're going to rank for this term. And then our product focused content marketer says, hey, we actually have no feature explainer explaining like actually how this works in the product. So I'm going to focus on that. And I'm going to try to find a case study candidate for this. And then maybe our gated person is saying like, hey, I'm going to create an inventory management template because there's lots of search volume for that. And that's going to generate like a ton of people we can nurture, put in a nurture program. So that's kind of the example of how we might go about a brainstorm session. We all are laddering up to the same topic, but each person is kind of owning and approaching that from a different angle. So it's very pro collaboration and pro ownership at the same time.
I think that's great because you have like a handful of specialists in
Mm-hmm.
your crew. Like one of the ways that I've designed my teams, and I think I'm definitely going to be taking your approach on this because I think that's way smarter than what I do. Um, but one of the things that I like to do is sort of go like, yeah, we have people in their swim lane. So I
Mm-hmm.
have a specialist or specialists, I have generalists, and then I'll say, do we have fast writers, slow writers? So can we respond to trends?
Mm-hmm.
And also do the other things that are necessary. But I think this whole like collaborative full funnel approach on even a single piece, like that makes it so much more cohesive, like a
Mm,
cohesive experience because you know where you want people to go and you
right.
know what needs to go into this. So,
Mm-hmm.
cool. Now, what comes next, right? You have that approach, you know what you're going to do. Walk me through the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, we handle project management the way that I think most teams probably do when it comes to ideation to publishing. I mean, we have used a few different tools depending on what has been available in different times in the company, and every company uses their own project management software. So I'm kind of agnostic about that, even though I have my favorite, which
Hmm.
is Airtable. But we've used a
Yes.
few different ones. Do you love Airtable too? Oh,
I
I
am
just
all in on Airtable.
so
Jacob is in the
obsessed.
audience right now, and he's seeing like he's on one of my teams right now, and you can speak to my love for Airtable. But yeah, anyways, sorry, I'm a huge
Yeah,
Airtable fanboy.
no, I'm such a big fan. The automations feature is, I think, what like pushed it over the edge for me, where I was like, this is exactly what I need
Yeah.
because you can just customize it so much to make the flow that you want. It's less manual work and less remembering things. Anyway, so that's my ad for Airtable. But basically, yeah. So when it comes to project management, like whatever tool we're using, we all share a calendar. So just to get into the nitty gritty a little bit of kind of how we do this, we share a calendar because we're publishing on the same property or properties as a team. But each person is kind of like the CEO of their own work stream. And so we had it broken down in Asana most recently. And so each person had like kind of like a sub section of the calendar. I don't know if you've used that and like kind of know what that looks like, but you're able to kind of have
Mm.
one main calendar and then subsections of that. So each person kind of owned that. So everyone has visibility on exactly what's going to be published. And
Yep.
all of the dates are there. You can make sure that you can see calendar view. And so stuff's not bumping up into each other in weird ways. So that's kind of how we organize it on the calendar. We're very pro like subtask as well. And so it's not just like publish this and it's just like a title. It's very much just like, okay, here's the drafting stage, here's the editing stage, here is the posting stage, here is the stage where you're going to go create internal links to this new piece, and make sure all of you are linking your inventory management posts to each other because they all relate to each other. And so that's kind of how like logistically the project management process works. I'm less precious about like when things go live, especially if you're talking about SEO focused content, because
Right.
like Google doesn't care. And we so that doesn't really matter as much. I mean, I usually like to say like space it out just so that like if someone does happen to go to the feed, it's not like 5 posts published on one day and stuff. So but
Right.
that's pretty easy to navigate around. But that tends to be how we approach it. We all share a calendar, shared visibility. We're all going through the same like subtasks, but everyone is kind of managing their own calendar. And sometimes that involves, I'll say, freelancers, and sometimes it doesn't. Especially as you get closer to the product, it's harder to outsource those types of things
Yeah.
to external people. So it tends to be that the most freelance stuff lives more at the top of the funnel. Tends to be like more SEO focused content, where the stuff that has to have a strong POV or strong product knowledge tends to sit internally. But I leave that up to each individual person and what they feel like their time is best spent on, and what is best spent like delegated to someone else.
I like that. Audience, I would love it if you could ask any questions about any of this as we go through. Kameron is a wealth of knowledge on all of this, as you've probably already seen. So feel free to ask any questions and we will address them on the stream. So I don't really have too many other questions about that, because the next thing that's going to happen is it will get published, then it will get refreshed within a certain period of time, rinse,
Mm-hmm.
repeat, right?
Yeah, generally, yes. The person focused on refreshes was kind of doing a bit of a mix. Like they were doing proactive stuff because we had like a dedicated resource to do that, which was great. But they were also doing a lot of monitoring and analytics and just looking at
Mm-hmm.
things that like, hey, this has been dropping and ranking in organic traffic for 3+ months. Like it's time to refresh it. And so they were doing a bit of like not necessarily like fully reactive. They were proactive about monitoring, but refreshing things that had already decayed, and then also keeping their eyes peeled for things that like catching things before they decay. So it's two sides to the same coin, really. But yeah, essentially that is how we approached it.
There was a tool that was out there, and I wish I could remember the name of it, but it actually gave you a content decay report, and I thought that was awesome, and it doesn't exist
Hmm.
anymore. They sunset it, and it made me very sad when they did.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
all right, let's talk about your pregame before you get into edit. We have a few minutes here. Let's talk about that. What do you do? You've got everything ready for you. You're sitting down. You're looking at the piece. What's next?
Yeah, two main things. I don't have too much of a crazy process, but two ideals to have. So one, I will say a LaCroix on the desk, have to have a fun beverage. So you have your fun beverage that's not just like plain water or ice
Mm-hmm.
water. Um, that's definitely helpful, helps me get into the editing spirit a little bit. And then rain sounds in my earbuds. I know some people are very much
Really?
like pro music or pro silence or whatever, but like specifically for me, rain sounds, I don't know why, it's been like my white noise of choice. And having it in my earbuds is just like, it really helps me have tunnel vision and focus on something. I can block everything else out if I have my LaCroix, my rain sounds in my earbuds.
That's awesome. We had it was Amanda O'Callahan on a while ago. I think it's anyways. And she said that she likes to have white noise going, and it's really funny when Spotify does its year in review, because she's like,
Oh
"Here's
yeah.
this banger from 2008," and I thought,
Hmm. Hmm.
I
You know,
like the white noise.
you just reminded me of exactly why I defaulted to rain sounds. Was there this, or there still is, I still use it, this external website. I think it's called like rainymood.com. And I started
Mm.
using that because I didn't want my Spotify all filled with like white noise and monks chanting and all these other like weird white noisy
Yeah.
background noise things. I wanted it to be actually my music. So I went to this external website. I tried one for a while that was like, I don't know if you played with it. It's like a coffee shop mixer sound
Yeah.
website. Yeah, I was like okay with that, but the sounds change too much. Like there are people like clinking
Yeah.
glasses sometimes, and it was actually more distracting for me. So it's just like straight rain sounds. That's my go-to.
I'm like headphones, just noise canceling headphones. I don't even listen to
Yeah,
anything. I'm just like got to be
just
in my own head about
yeah,
this, and yeah, just keep going.
makes sense.
All right. So we're at the half hour mark now. If you can pull up the draft while we
Yeah.
have the content harmony break here, everybody can kind of check this out. Awesome tool. Highly recommend it. Check it out. While we wait for the edit, I wanted to introduce you to one of my new favorite tools. It's called Content Harmony, and here's why it's my new favorite. First, I hate writing content briefs just because of how much time it takes. If you want to get the information you need, you have to bounce between so many different tools. You've got the keyword data from one tool. You need to use Google to see who you're going up against. You need to know what their domain authority is. You have to figure out the average word count. What's the keyword density? What are the search trends, and so much more. And let's be honest, we don't do it all because it takes too long. Now that's where Content Harmony comes in. First, all you have to do is upload your key phrases, and its AI-assisted tool will show you at a glance the search intent of each key phrase, the average word count across all the top ranking results, how optimized the average piece is, the average links to each piece, and the average domain authority across all the competitors. And when you click into a key phrase, you get even more detailed information, such as the search intent of each key phrase, the age range of the ranking results, the SERP features, and the keyword seasonality and trends. You can also do a topic analysis and see the keyword density that you should be targeting, the outline of each article that ranks in the SERP, questions people are actually asking with information from Google, Quora, Reddit, and more, and the common external links that people are citing, your top internal link targets, high authority resources, and recent news to keep your results fresh. Also, you can get way more detailed information on each of your SERP competitors. You can see what images are ranking and what videos are also going out there. And here's the cool part. All you have to do is click any of these elements and it will automatically populate a brief, which you can then share with anyone. And finally, once you get the first draft back, you can run it through their content grader and see just how well optimized the article is. Seriously, I just started using it and it's saving me at least 2 hours a brief and has consolidated 4 of my most commonly used tools. Now, if you want to try it out for yourself, you can run 10 reports for $10. Also, you can help support the channel and get 2 months of free bonus credits when you purchase the full plan through my link. All right, now let's jump back into the edit. All right, cool. So before we get into the piece, Kameron, tell me a little bit about, give me your first impression of what we saw here. And just so the audience knows, the piece is, what is the ideal content marketing team structure? And I will be putting a link to the chat.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, first impressions, I kind of before I edit anything, I want to make sure I understand like the goal and what the piece was is trying to do, because I don't think I can judge it fairly without that. So one of my first impressions was just that this is probably a search focused piece. I mean, just the way the headings are laid out and written, they seem to be very centered around keywords that probably have search volume. So that was kind of like my first impression was like, okay, this is a search focused piece. I'll use that assumption. If I'm wrong, then a lot of my comments will be irrelevant, but let's just pretend that it's a search focused piece then.
Right.
That's my first impression. But sometimes, yeah, I mean, I also thought about the fact that I want my search focused pieces to not be so easy to spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I want them to rank well, and there's a certain type of formatting and certain types of headings that you have to, like if you want it to rank for a search term, you want to make sure you're including that search term and talking about those things and answering that query. But I want to do it in such an elegant way that it's not so immediately like, oh, this is an SEO article, you know?
Right.
Especially because there's so much, I feel like there's a lack of trust with Google search results these days. And, Google recently came out and was saying like, hey, we're afraid we're losing market share, search market share to TikTok because people trust it, and
Yeah.
Reddit, and people appending Reddit on the end of their queries because they don't trust things that look like this, even if it's great information, even if it's accurate. I think we've all gotten a little jaded, and I've done it too, where you read articles and you're like, some person was paid like $200 to write this, and they probably don't have any expertise, and I don't know if I can trust it. Especially for those topics that are like, this is less so, but topics that are like your money, your life queries, Google
Yeah.
describes as things that can affect your money or your life. So investment content about like medical issues and stuff. So especially for that type of stuff, you want it to have an air of trustworthiness, which sometimes that's in the formatting, the things you include, the author themselves. So yeah, first impression, this is probably a search focused article, but I also wish that wasn't so obvious from the get-go.
Yeah, there's a lot of the thing about search content that
Mhm.
can bother me. Like, I'll just be real, it bothers
Yeah.
me is that it carries the same cadence as everything else. So here is the thing, then we have a rhetorical question, and then
Mhm.
why, and then we like, and it feels the same. There's no byline, there's no differentiation. Anyways, let's go into this first comment
Mhm.
here. So you're making the assumption this is a search query, and yeah, we kind of covered that. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. I gave
What
away my
is a
first
content?
comment.
So uh, what is a content marketing team?
Yeah,
Right.
so I'll go back up a little bit. I added like two comments on to the end of my first comment. So yes, I think it's a search focused article, just the way it appears. I feel like the likely keyword is content marketing team structure. So again, that's kind of how I'm going to be judging this piece. Like, how well does it answer that question? So that's another assumption, but I feel like it's what the article was intending to do. Um, and I noticed the title of this piece is, what is the ideal content marketing team structure? I'm getting over a cold. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
What is the ideal content marketing team structure? It's the exact title of the number one ranking article for that query already. So if the title of this Google Doc is the intended title of this piece, I would say like, let's differentiate, because that's already kind of what's ranking. Like, let's be different. It's one thing to say like, okay, we want to like acknowledge the piece that's ranking the best and say like, okay, what is Google trying to reward? But you don't want to copy it completely, because I feel like
Right.
you'll just net out to being like the second best version of what's already there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something, like, you need to do the research ahead of time
Hmm.
to not sound like everybody else, instead of just remixing the
Hmm.
remixes, because that's what a lot of the top 10 results are now.
Hmm.
And that's not helpful for anybody.
Totally.
All
Yeah,
right, let's
exactly.
move. Let's move forward.
Yeah, perfect.
Where would you like
Um,
to go next?
all right, let's see. I'm trying to remember my comments here. And this is also how I would edit a piece. I generally try to avoid, or at least first pass on something, I would try to make these like more sweeping comments rather than like getting in there and changing things myself, or even doing like track changes. I'd rather like teach someone how to fish than like do it
Yeah.
for them. So that's kind of what I try to do as a first pass, rather than like, getting in there and fiddling with things and tweaking paragraphs and stuff myself. So that's kind of how I approach this piece as well. My next comment was kind of like, okay, if the title is, what's the ideal content marketing team structure, and that's what the piece is about, I think if I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone searching for that, I think I can safely assume that someone searching for that already knows what a content marketing team is and does. So
Right.
they just want to dig into that, like, what is the ideal structure? Like, structure is, I think, the crux of this article. So like, let's dive into that. I think you can actually just nix this paragraph altogether, because it seems like something that the person searching this query would already know. Um,
Right.
I will say that sometimes I get feedback back in response to my feedback, at saying like, well, all of the top ranking articles for this query have a paragraph like this. So to compete, we have to do this. And okay, maybe, but let's try it. Maybe the only things that are ranking have this paragraph because that's all that exists, and everyone's just been copying each other for so long that that's all that Google has to work with and all that they have to rank. try something different. It might actually rank. Google doesn't just like pick out things like, oh, let's make them all exactly the same. You notice a lot of
Right.
queries, they're trying to actually diversify the types of results they give because they don't want it to just be like 10 of the same type of article that say basically the same thing. I mean, their
Yep.
algorithm, they've said at least they're trying to like, hey, here are a few articles, here's a few comparison pieces, here's a sales page. Like, what did you want? So some people have different intents. Some people want to know different information. So I'm not afraid to try that. I would say like put yourself in the shoes of the searcher first, see if that works. And then if it doesn't, okay, maybe we can kind of cater to what's already ranking.
Yeah, I've been working with a client now. I was saying I've done a lot of SERP analysis lately, and one of the things that I've noticed in the SERPs that I've been looking at, because it's mostly definition pieces, right? What
Hmm.
is all of that, right? And we all know those pieces of content. We've all
Hmm.
written those pieces of content,
Right.
published them. Um, but what I've been noticing is that, traditionally HubSpot's the one that takes up a lot of the search results
Hmm.
for all of these. They're 4,000 word pieces. And what I'm starting to see is if it's something like a straight definition piece, I've seen things where it's like 300 words and like fewer links outranking everything because it just gets to the point and then
Yeah.
it doesn't need any of the rest of it. So,
Yeah, it's a great point.
anyways, just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah,
All right. So
definitely.
if we want to rank for content marketing team structure, yeah, okay. So Googling the phrase returns images first. Yeah, keep going with that.
Yeah, so basically one of the research steps that I like to take, and I think a lot of people do, it's nothing super revolutionary, is like, okay, if we want this post to rank, like let's see what's already ranking. It seems like they did that to some extent. That's probably why that first paragraph was included, that um, the pages that are ranking probably have a paragraph like that, but they also include a lot of images. And it makes sense. Like when you think about, okay, content marketing team structure, a lot of that is like amorphous to just kind of talk about in text form. It's like, okay, let me see it.
Hmm.
What is your org chart? Show me that. And so I think that would be, if even if it didn't give you like a rankings boost per se, I think it would really help the engagement on your post. And I think you would get a lot more interested in it and people like converting, staying on your site longer if you had that visual aid to kind of supplement what you're writing about. Because this is one of those topics that's like, okay, wait, what does that mean again? How does that actually look? It's hard to like kind of picture unless you have a visual
Yeah.
aid. So those topics that are a little bit harder to grasp with just written text, I think are really nice to pair with an image. And you can see that in Google. Like I said, the reason I even came up with that idea is because Google has images ranking as well, with the structure component. So I think that would be really helpful to include in a piece like this if you had the resources.
And this is not one of those images for the sake of images type scenarios. Like,
Right.
truly is something that, how can you visualize that in a way that makes it easier to grasp? Even in like, if somebody doesn't have the time, right? Oh, here's something that they can throw into a slide deck as they're trying to talk to their boss about, getting the right hires or whatever, right?
Hmm.
Here's a
Yeah.
method, you know. Um, all right, so this is also personal anecdotes. All right, tell me about anecdotes inside search focused content, because this
Yeah.
falls at the intersection of what you were talking about before.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think with search focused content, it's kind of like the framework, right? Like there are certain parameters that have to be in place for search focused content to work and to rank, but I think you have a lot more room to play within those parameters and those outlines, and I think most of us think there are. I mean, obviously it comes down to experimentation. Like sometimes it might work, sometimes it might not work depending on how competitive the query is and yada yada and all of that stuff. But I think for things like this, especially, there is so much variance when it comes to org structures and things like that that it would really benefit, I think, from personal anecdotes. It won't sound like every other piece ranking on page one if you're talking about like, hey, I interviewed 5 content marketers and this is how their org structure looks. That is so much more engaging and so much more helpful. Is
Hmm.
what Google is trying to reward these days anyway. What is the most helpful content? Um, I think that's way better than just being like, okay, this is something that anyone can find on the Google search results if they Google content marketing team structure, which is kind of what this seems like. Like they probably did their research as best as they could using Google, but how can we go outside of Google and create something better, something that actually is talking to real people who are dealing with this, if not for ranking purposes, then at least for engagement purposes.
And you're borrowing that experience, right? Like we've now got Eat going out there. So you're
Hmm.
borrowing the experience, even if you don't have it on your own, from people who are actually
Exactly.
doing it. Do you feel
Exactly.
like just from a general perspective, do you feel like enough people are putting in that extra work to do that? Or are we just on a hamster wheel?
Yeah, I do think it's the exception as far as what I've seen. Maybe there are more people doing it than not. I mean, everyone's kind of in their own vertical in B2B SaaS. Like you're kind of focused on your own landscape, your own competitors. Maybe in landscapes that I haven't looked at, there are people doing this a lot better. Certainly, I think that like I said earlier, like people doing content marketing in like medical fields and finance fields have had to worry about this for a lot longer anyway, because the criteria is so much stricter for those types of verticals. But I think like everyone else is having to catch up now, and some people are a little bit more advanced in that area. I'll call it advanced. I think that's advanced content marketing, where you're not just like saying, hey, here's a keyword and hey, here's information about it, whether a human person wrote it or an AI assisted writing it. But basically, you're kind of just like, what is this? This is that. And it's very
Right.
robotic and it answers the question. We hope it at least answers the question, but it's not interesting. It's not going to win you any fans. It might not even convert just because it seems, to my point earlier about it not seeming super trustworthy, because it
Yeah.
just looks like SEO content. So yeah, I think it's the exception, but I'm like I would hope to be proven wrong, and I hope that more people kind of come and start doing that a little bit better. Like I said, I'm not anti-search content at all. I think like that is my background, and that's where I'm coming from. Create that content, but there's no reason it can't also include, the reason being, resources, I guess. Like it takes more time to interview people. It takes more time to include personal anecdotes and original research and things like that. But I think it makes a difference. It makes it worth
It gives it a lot more soul.
it.
Like you can
Yeah.
feel the effort. And if you're a freelancer watching this, I think that's going to be one of the major things that sets you apart from
Mm,
anybody else, and gets you more work. But also, from the business perspective, is the thing that makes it so people want to click deeper, right? Like SEO is a channel; it's not the end all be all.
hmm.
So if you're like if my hypothesis is correct about Google ranking things that have are driving their own traffic, then getting people to go deeper or even going after that type in traffic afterwards, like that's the way that you're really trying to do it. That's how you distinguish. So I think this is a really great point here. All right, let's keep going on here. There is so much you can expand on in structure. You've got a lot of comments on just this one line.
Yeah. So I think that's the crux of it though. I mean, like the direction this article went in, I feel like there is so much you can cover in like content marketing teams and stuff, that this article feels like very broad, and it goes about like a centimeter deep on every topic that it touches. Whereas I think for this piece where you're talking about, like, you're not talking about just content marketing teams, you're not just talking about content marketing. The query is really, I feel like the crux of it is that structure aspect. Like, how do you structure it? How do you do your team? And like that's what people are craving. That's the information it seems like people are craving. So to kind
Right.
of spend so much time just defining, like, this is what a content writer would do, this is what a social media person would do, is like they can find that information elsewhere. If you really feel like that's necessary for this article, you can link out to other articles that explain that more definitionally and things like that. But I wouldn't spend all of your time and your space in this article defining that out. Like, maybe touch on it briefly, but spend most of your time talking about the structure aspect. Yeah, I just feel like it's not that this content is bad. It doesn't necessarily like read horribly or anything like that. I would just say, like, honestly, take this out, link out if you feel like that's necessary, but talk about a few different structure options. Say, like, maybe you have like option 1, 2, and 3. Here are like 3 of the most common content marketing team structures, and here's how it looks. Here are the pros and cons of each. I feel like that would be so much more, like, immensely more helpful than just defining the types of roles that could exist on a team.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is going with the expert situation too. Like you can take it a step further than just like, here's 1, 2, 3. Like here's how Cameron at Shopify does this.
Hmm.
Here's how Tommy at the Content Studio does this, right?
Right.
Um, because then you can also say, like, here are the different needs and why they structure their teams this way,
Right.
right? Because context is very important with
Totally.
team structure in particular, because it's different for every company.
Exactly. I think that's actually a huge problem is just trying to adopt everything that you see because it's like, oh, shiny object, that sounds smart, that sounds right, without kind of acknowledging the context it was created for. So
Right.
yeah, when you include that context, it helps people make better decisions, which I think, again, back to that helpfulness thing, that is the most
Yeah.
helpful way that you can lay out the content.
Yeah. And really thinking about why a person is coming into this piece in the first place. Like,
Mm-hmm.
who is it that's even searching for this? Maybe it's a new content manager going, ah,
Mm-hmm.
crap, I don't know what to do because I just got this promotion. I'm no longer an individual contributor. I got promoted. Like, there's a whole lot of extra stuff that's involved with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then also to like add to that, that's also a really good opportunity to create other inroads to other pieces of content if
Right.
you have that idea of who it is that's actually reading it in the first place and why they might be
Totally.
searching for it.
Yeah,
All
back
right,
to that
let's keep
audience
going here.
centricity kind of thing. Yeah, so my next comment is actually quite a bit further down. It's size and scope, that section. Yeah. So I think in a few places I noticed that the writer phrased it, they added questions like, okay, what should you do? What's the ideal? But then like proceeded to have no point of view on it. It was like, it
Mm,
depends, which I think there's a lot of that, and it depends is a totally valid answer. But I think one thing, especially like now moving forward, that's going to differentiate any content, but search content specifically, from something that, say, a machine could generate for you, is having a point of view. Hey,
yep.
there are lots of different ways that you can structure your content team. As we've seen, as I've just laid out for you, there are different options. Like these 5 content marketers all do it this way, but we feel at this company or whatever that you should do this is like the best way to do it, and this is why, or this is how you should be thinking about it. I think it's okay to take a stance even for search focused content. So I would say don't shy away. Like when you introduce these questions, like, so what should you do, say what you think the person should do. I mean, you can caveat it and say like, be mindful of your context, yada yada, but I think this is like the perfect type of article um to take a POV, to take a stance on. Again, yeah, it's just going to help differentiate and build trust too with your audience. Like, oh, hey, an actual human with thoughts and opinions wrote this, rather than it's purely definitional.
Yeah. And I think what I would do with this piece too is, talking about the Lent experience by asking people beyond that, like, let's talk to people who are at different company sizes because your team
Hmm.
structure is going to change based on the resources you have available to you.
Yeah.
Like, this piece is really good in the sense that it kind of gives the broad overview,
Hmm.
but it doesn't necessarily give you the, like, here's what you could do at this stage,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I feel like,
Because
yeah, it leaves a
then,
lot up to the reader to fill in those gaps.
yeah, because like I've run content teams that started with 5 freelancers and then scaled up to 40 contributors across multiple disciplines, right,
Hmm.
within the company, and that's a completely different structure. And
Yeah.
the ideal is that you get to that place,
Hmm.
but how do you get there? And like that's one of those opportunities too. I see a lot in different companies where they're like,
Hmm.
you know both the enterprise audience and the small business audience, they're going after the same key phrases, and it's like this is an
Hmm.
opportunity to cover that spread
Totally.
and still like make sure that you're serving the audience need. Anyways, okay, so we're now at the conclusion. Tell me what you think about the conclusion.
Yes. And I kind of alluded to this earlier when we were talking about like product centric content, not meaning that, okay, it just has like what feels like an ad at the end and that's it. Um, yeah, I just feel like, again, like this piece was not necessarily poorly written or anything. Like I'm really just commenting on like structure and how it feels, which is how I would make my first pass on any piece of content anyway, because I think, fix that and then we can worry about the fine tuning and the details. But yeah, it kind of like talking about content marketing team structure and then being like, hey, we can help with this thing, which seems loosely related um, to content marketing team structure. It just, yeah, it doesn't, it feels a little bit jarring. It feels like it was maybe you even have like the same CTA copy that you use across multiple blog posts. It just doesn't seem as intentional. And I think what I've had my teams do in the past, which I think works really well, is create custom CTAs that are really contextual based on the topic specifically. So if you're writing about content marketing team structure, maybe you have a tool that helps like different members of your content team like collaborate better together and in whatever structure you like, just phrase it in a way that like more closely relates to the actual topic that you just talked about. And you don't have to include it just at the end either. You can include it, and I actually would encourage it included a little bit more contextually throughout the piece as well, because again, not everyone's like going to read till the very end anyway. And I also added in my comment here, like if you're finding it really hard to include it contextually throughout your piece or create CTA copy that is really specific to your product and also the topic, then the topic itself might be too far a cry from your product to like, why are we pursuing this, I guess is the question that I would ask. If you can't, you're like, oh, I'm struggling to like tie this CTA to the topic, then maybe that's a sign that it's too broad of a topic and might bring in traffic, but traffic might not be super qualified.
So when I was at QuickBooks, we actually did because weaving in the product, right? This is one of those things that I know it can make the hair on a lot of people in the space's neck raise.
Mm-hmm.
And just as an anecdotal thing, right? When I was at QuickBooks, we actually did a customer survey of a lot of people who just read the blog, right? Didn't focus on customers, just blog readers. And one of the things that we found that was a great piece of feedback was that they wanted some product weaved in,
Mm-hmm.
because most of the time, right? I don't even remember the last website I looked at today. Like when I searched for something, I don't remember what it was that I looked at. I don't care, right? I care about a problem that I want to solve. And if that's weaved in, then that gives us the ability to like really go further into solving the problem, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I just
Yeah,
thought it was
100%.
interesting that.
Sorry, I
Go
feel
ahead.
like we keep talking over each other, but no, I was going to say it's so funny that you mentioned that because that happened somewhat recently to us as well. We were reading a comment that was like, "Wait, you're talking about this topic? I thought Shopify had a feature for that, and they didn't mention it anywhere in the article." And we're like,
Right.
"Oh shoot!" Like that's a big missed opportunity, and it actually was such a like good reminder that like. Oh, it's not, we're more concerned than our audience even is about like including the product. Like people know, I mean, they know at least what Shopify does, and they're kind of coming to the site expecting us to be talking about that. Like people, I think for the most part, know that Shopify is not just a publication. Like we're an actual SaaS,
Right.
and we sell a product, we sell products, and so I think people are coming to the site expecting that to be weaved in some way, shape, or form. So it was actually like a really good reminder that like, oh yeah, we can include this, and actually there's an appetite for it.
There's a really good opportunity too to collaborate with your help docs team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're the ones who know how to use the product so much. So it's like, how can we collaborate on that? And I think that part is the most fun because now you're using your content as an asset. Uh, Martin says, you know, the nicest, most knowledgeable people, Tommy. Thanks, guys. So
Oh,
thank you for sticking with us for so long. I really appreciate that. Cameron, if you can wrap, sort of kind of give us a summary here of what you've been talking about. Let's wrap it up. We got about 30 seconds left here. Let's go
yeah,
from there.
cool. I mean, yeah, just to kind of go back to the beginning to about my philosophy again, nothing shiny. I don't think it's anything revolutionary, but I think it's a really helpful guiding principle for B2B SaaS content marketing. It's that intersection of product, your audience, and the channel, and making sure that like the sweet spot is where those things overlap. Being mindful of your channel and creating things for that channel in a way that appeals to your audience, your desired audience. In a way that also ladders back up to your product is going to reach people in an authentic way, but in a way that gives you the best chance to acquire customers, which is what we're all here to do, even though we're here to like educate and inspire and entertain. But at the end of the day, yeah, we're working for companies where like we hope that the end result is to get our company's business, whether that's, one click away or, 5 years away. Like we're here to influence that
Right.
in some way, shape, or form.
We got to make money. That's really what the whole thing is about.
That's what we're doing.
Make the unit economics of a piece of piece of content. Let's make that better.
Mm,
Cool. Kameron, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I really
yeah.
appreciate you sharing your knowledge, your insights. I think everybody here can really speak to that. Um, yeah, I really appreciate it. Just to wrap everything up here, I just wanted to say thank you so much, everybody. If you were to go get the Content Harmony, go ahead and click on this link right here. If you sign up, you get a $10. It takes $10 for 10 credits. And also, if you decide to buy a full product, it goes. You can get 2 months of free credits by working with us. Also, if you want to get more of the cutting room and you're on the website right now, go ahead and put your email address below. You'll get all of the exclusive bonuses like the content library that we're putting together of all of our previous edits. You'll get replays of our previous guests, as well as discounts and some exclusive bonus offers. That's really it. Thank you so much for everyone for coming on. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much for watching. If you like that episode, please leave a comment and a like down below. And if you want to be notified about future episodes, please go to thecontentstudio.com/the cutting room, enter your email address. You'll also get replays and other exclusive bonuses. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.